Everybody, this is Kurtz Smith coming at you from Surfing Gear, www.surfinggear.com. And today I want to talk to you about surfboard repair. It's the perfect time of year, now that winter's on us, to take a look at your board or your boards and see if there's any repair work that's necessary as you have that downtime during the cold winter months. So I brought out one of my boards that has a ding on it, and that is what we call a surfboard damage. The slang in surfese is a ding, and you can see that I've got one up here towards the nose of my board. And just real quick on surfboard repair, one of the best surfboard repair methods for real short term is a piece of duct tape. Smack that duct tape on there and you're back in the water in minutes. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. But the first thing you want to be thinking about is cleaning your board off. But even before we do any of that, the first thing you've got to determine when doing surfboard repair is, do you have an epoxy surfboard or do you have a regular polyester foam core board? What's the difference between the two? Well, the traditional boards that when foam came into the market back in the mid-50s, it was made out of something called polyurethane foam. So I would say, I can't put a percentage on it, but probably today in the marketplace, I'm going to venture to say at least 60 to 65, maybe even 70% of the boards out there are polyurethane foam, the traditional foam. And a polyurethane blank is wrapped in fiberglass cloth, and then the polyester resin is poured over the foam blank, which is where you get the hard shell. Now back in the late 80s, early 90s, epoxy foam blanks started to make their way into the marketplace, and most especially in the early 2000s when Clark Foam went out of business. Epoxy had a huge resurgence. And epoxy is basically made out of a polystyrene foam blank, and it has epoxy resin that's poured on it to give it the hard shell. What you do not want to do is do a surfboard repair on an epoxy board using polyester resin and vice versa. You don't want to do a repair on an epoxy board with polyester resin. You don't want to do a repair on a regular foam core board using epoxy resin. What'll happen is when the incorrect resins mix, it literally will melt your board. So how do you decide what kind of board you have? Do you have an epoxy or do you have a regular foam core board? Well, a good board should have, if it's epoxy, it should have it written on the board. And if you notice down here on the tail end of my board, this board, it says 100% epoxy. And that means that this foam blank is an epoxy blank. Most of the polyurethane foam blank traditional boards, some of them will have it written on there, some not. But the epoxies, any decent epoxy board should have that written on there so you know you're dealing with epoxy. And then when you purchase repair kits, you'll be buying either an epoxy repair kit that you see here, and this is, we sell these at Surfing Gear. This is from Ding All. It's a super sized epoxy repair kit for epoxy boards only. This is a smaller standard size epoxy repair kit. Okay. Now going to regular polyurethane, this is a super sized regular polyester resin repair kit, and then this is a regular sized polyester resin repair kit. So when you repair a board, you're going to be using either the epoxy or the polyester resin setups. Very important. Make sure you get that right. Now, because mine is an epoxy board, and one other thing I'll mention, a lot of folks know about Sun Cure. Sun Cure is the real quick, slap it on your board and you're back in the water in 10 or 15 minutes. And we also sell this at Surfing Gear. Sun Cure, the tubes of Sun Cure also come in regular epoxy fiber fill and polyester fiber fill. So depending on whether or not you have an epoxy board or just a regular polyurethane board, you can go ahead and get the Sun Cure that'll meet your needs. But for today, since we're dealing with an epoxy board, I'm dealing with epoxy repair kits, okay? Now the first thing I want to do when I prep this board for repair is I want to get my old wax off the board. Well, how do you do that? First thing I'll do is, now that it's December, it's kind of tough to have your board sit in the sun and have the wax melt off of it, which is normally what I'll do in a hot summer month. You can take your board, sit it out in your backyard, leave it out there for about 15 minutes. You can literally take a paper towel and just wipe the old wax off. We're not going to be able to do that today because it's too chilly. It's about 65 degrees here in South Carolina today. So I'm going to do two things. First thing is, this is from Sticky Bumps. We sell this at Surfing Gear. This is wax remover. I'm going to be using this in just a couple of minutes. But the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take a hair dryer, and this is a great trick to use to just heat up the wax on your board. And I'm just going to turn it on for a, when you turn this on, you go ahead and you can put get the wax nice and soupy using this hair dryer. And then basically you're going to take this spatula and you can literally just scrape the wax off your board after you've heated it up with the hair dryer. So we're going to come back in just a couple minutes. I'm going to work on my board. You guys take a break and we'll be back in just a few minutes to show you how we're going to make this board look like it's almost right out of the showroom clean when we finish it with this wax remover. Okay, so I've been working on this board now to get it nice and clean, to get most of the wax off of it. I just worked on the bottom of it, so the bottom's looking pretty darn good. And the top, I've got pretty much all the wax off. And you can see that although this board doesn't look like it's right out of the showroom, it's looking pretty darn good. So before you work on a repair, you want to make sure that there is no dirt, wax, that type of thing. So we're going to pan over to the repair that I'm going to be working on here, which is this right here. It's this ding up by the nose. And you can see that I've got it nice and clean, ready for repair. Now let's see what we've got here before we cut off of this film. And I'm going to pull this duct tape off. To be quite honest with you, I haven't seen this since I did it. And this is, I hate to say it, this has been on here for almost a year. And there's the culprit. So that right there, that ding, is what we're going to be repairing on the next video. And you can see where the glass has been crushed in. And so I'm going to show you just an easy way to repair this. And this is a very easy repair versus a rail ding that we'll look at in a later video that's a little trickier. But this one's pretty easy. But again, the big point to focus on is that this is an epoxy board, therefore we want to use the epoxy repair kit, not the polyester resin repair kit. Okay? Okay, that's it for right now. We'll come back at you with another video on actually doing the repair on this ding. But thank you so much for listening to this. Carpe diem, seize the day.